All right, so I am, as Marcy said, I've been teaching for 15 years, mostly in third grade. I've also taught second and fourth grades. And I've been doing Imaginative Inquiry in K-5 classrooms. I'm part of a group called the Institute for Imaginative Inquiry. You can see us there, right there. And I'm going to start with first how I got into this work. When I was teaching in the public school, East Village Community School, about 15 years ago, I was really faced with the challenge of how to teach social studies to my students. Social studies to me is inherently important. I feel that it's been, in many schools and curriculums, it's been cut out. But to me, it really is a way to connect students with the world around them. The challenge, of course, was I had many students who had never even left their own neighborhoods. So as a progressive teacher, I wasn't sure how to give them that authentic experiences where they could really, feel and experience firsthand, especially since the curriculum at that time was teaching history. How do you have students go back into the past and experience what happened in history? Well, partly what answered that question was I began working with Kelly Dawn Holsapple, who's the person on the left there, who started bringing in theater and education program into our school. That has evolved into what Imaginative Inquiry is today. So unlike what you might think when you think of drama or drama for learning, it's not the play at the end of a study. It's not about acting or learning lines. It's really about activating children's imaginations. And for me, that became, I started learning about the power of children's imaginations and how it can be used as a teaching tool. So before I talk more about what Imaginative Inquiry is, I thought we could just have a quick share out of just some ideas about how you think children's imaginations can help their learning. Any ideas or any just thoughts that come to mind? How do children's imaginations help their learning? How do you see that in your classroom, or what do you think it could do?
I teach pre-K 4- and 5-year-olds at Manhattan Country School. Okay. And I think, hi, Elaine. And I think that in dramatic play, children are making sense of the world around them. They're taking on roles of family and workers and acting them out so they can understand them better.
So the process of really doing and playing out, I like the word play in there, is a way to help them learn and process.
Yeah.
I wonder, for those of you who teach older kids, do you think that might come into play with older grades?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tristan. I noticed that when I use games, I teach computer science to 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and especially with the 10th graders who don't have much foundational knowledge yet in the material. I find that having them build games around their own desires helps like intrinsically motivate them to learn the other kinds of more memorization-based stuff.
So again, bringing it back to something that they're connecting with first.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to say, as a second, third grade teacher, what I find the kids just doing naturally all the time is creating their own dramas, and when at play, their imagination is taking off. And I find that what they do is they incorporate a lot of the things that they're learning and or providing themselves with opportunities to problem solve too. And so I see a tremendous amount of power that comes through all of that. And I started to read one of your articles and just saw also, I see something happening all the time that's very social studies oriented to me, is the kids playing in the woods, and they always have some sort of bartering system going on. So that just, I just feel that it's just a perfect opportunity.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a little friend who just walked in the room. That's fine.
Yeah, thanks for all of your comments. And let's see here. Yeah, I think for me, the whole idea of using one's imagination is really about, sorry, trying to know, here we go, is really about having them think about, sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once here. Here we go. Okay. To help them create a narrative. And the power of storytelling is, you know, especially for young children. And when I say young, I'm really talking about elementary school grades. I think it's very powerful. Now, as students get older, that narrative becomes something that is based much more in really trying to figure out things that they're learning about in the world at large. So it can involve more social studies based themes about communities, about people, about politics. But really what it allows them to do is to step into a context. And that is the power of imaginative inquiry. It's helping to create a context for students where as they step into it, they are, in my mind, experience it firsthand. And that's where, as a teacher, as a progressive teacher again, I feel that I'm giving them some kind of authentic experience, and I'll talk more about where that lies, because of course, much of it is imaginary. It allows them to explore things, as many of you described, in an open-ended way, that aspect of play. And Tristan, thank you for mentioning that it can go up into the high school years. It allows them to take on different roles and perspectives. They don't have to be themselves. And in that, there's a lot of problem solving that can happen. And especially if we design the lessons in a way that puts problem solving at the center of it, you know, being able to imagine that context is a powerful tool to help them problem solve and make decisions. And finally, for me, it's a powerful tool for collective learning and collective action. So because we have a classroom full of students and they're doing imaginative inquiry together, it's an opportunity for them to work together and to think about issues of social justice. So our institute, basically the Institute for Imaginative, sorry. Here we go. So again, we use drama for learning. What we do is we do workshops, as Marcy mentioned, we do workshops for educators. There's one coming up in November. We can tailor them to schools and teachers' needs, but we also do curriculum development and coaching for teachers, which I'll talk more about at the end. So what is imaginative inquiry? Imaginative inquiry came out of a program that was developed in the United Kingdom. And you can see the website address below. That will be part of the slides. It really is comprised of 3 components. And we talked a lot about the inquiry piece. It's again, centering the lessons around a problem that students can then think about how to solve. Because the context is created around that, there's an opportunity for investigation, which is not just open-ended exploration, but research. And that's really important because it's not about imagining things and really anything goes, right? As teachers, we are also trying to ground them in what they're learning, in the facts and what the research that they're doing, even as early as pre-K and kindergarten. I would say pre-K it's a little bit different, but definitely for kindergarten. And what's important here is that it is it's more improvisational rather than a simulation. So a lot of times I hear people say, oh, we did a simulation of this event. In my mind, a simulation has an end result that we already know about before we get into it, right? So a simulation of the immigrants arriving to Ellis Island. Often we're told what the story is and we go through the motions. In Imaginative Inquiry, because it's the drama is centered around a problem, students enter into roles and they don't know what the outcome is. So it's really a process of their using what they've learned, using their research, using their imaginations to put themselves into that role to then try to make decisions around it in an open-ended way. So the drama for learning part, there are specific drama conventions that we teach that can be used very effectively depending on the kind of lesson that you're teaching. It involves your students stepping into different roles, different people, allowing them to experience different points of view. And in those events, we often try to raise the stakes a bit so that it's a compelling story, right? It's not just about, which it also can be. It can be about playing, kind of playing out a kind of a scene or a situation or relationships, but often we center it around a particular problem. And then that problem, just like in any narrative or a fictional story, can get more problematic as time goes on. And the last piece is really critical. It's called Mantle of the Expert. And what that basically means is that the students are enrolled as an expert team. And when I say expert, I'm using that in not a loose way. So it's not just saying to your students, oh, you're experts on this topic, so you tell me what to do, or you tell me what it's like. Again, it's research-based, and the reason they're experts is because they are doing the work, and they're doing the study, and they're doing the research. But what it does is it provides a framework for your students. The framework is, again, a problem. It centers it around a particular problem, a compelling story. And usually this framework may span several days, several weeks, or an entire year. And I'll have some examples of that coming up. Usually there's a particular mission that they have to solve. And what that really means is that you're giving them a purpose for the study. So instead of saying, we're going to be studying about the indigenous people here in Manhattan because I'm the teacher and this is third grade and this is what we do in third grade, the mission might be something that actually is giving them a purpose for doing that study. And again, I'll have examples coming up. The other thing is that the context is for all the students to be in together, right? So it's a framework where they're working as a team, which is that social piece to Imaginative Inquiry. And so altogether, Imaginative Inquiry is really a very powerful tool for teaching social activism, which is what I love about it. It is not something that has to teach social activism, but more and more when I introduce it in social studies, in a social studies unit, in various classrooms, various grades, what I try to do is if you have a choice between which perspective you want your students to step into, is it the perspective of the oppressor? Or is it the perspective of the people who are fighting for change? I'm going to go with the people fighting for change. In fact, students often will talk about how they really feel the emotions that they believe the people felt, that they really feel like they were there. And the last thing I want them to do is to identify with the feelings of somebody who is, coming from a position where it is historically the rulers or the people who thought that they were superior or could justify certain atrocities, or people who were the oppressors in history. And so we're really trying to ask them to be people who can, in solving the problem, be change agents in society and really practice what does it mean to promote social justice. So some examples. So there are different mantles that I've used with different grades. So an example in the lower grades, in the kindergarten class here at LREI, they were doing a bird study. And so I came in, as you can see, I am an ornithologist. In fact, I am John J. Audubon. And I came in and I told them that I have made bird guides and I would like to make a bird guide of New York City. And I need their help because I know that they're studying about birds of New York City. So again, they're the experts as they are studying about birds. They're kind of enlisted to help me create a bird guide. So at that point, there's a parallel drama going on. One is that they are ornithologists who are doing the bird study, which basically they are doing, and they're creating a bird guide as they go along, which is basically what they would be doing in class anyway. But at the same time, given the different things they're studying, they're also stepping in as the birds that they are studying. Now, typically, I wouldn't ask students to be animals just for the sake of being animals. So it's not like, oh, we're going to do a farm study. You know, you can be the goat, you can be the cow. It's not like that. But here, stepping into the body and think about the behaviors of the birds is something that they are experiencing directly and concretely. And then they can step out of it and reflect on what they did. So it's giving the younger children something very concrete that they can experience. They're definitely using their imaginations, but it's also grounded in the knowledge that they're gaining and what they're experiencing. And here in this picture, you can see the bandanas were to identify the different bird groups that they were studying. And here they had just built their nests and they were sitting at their nests as part of the study. Okay, in fourth grade, the fourth graders were doing an immigration study. And so as a way to frame that study, we had them, so the mantle here was that the New York Historical Society had a scrapbook that they had found, and they needed help putting it back together. So the fourth graders were given bits and pieces of this scrapbook. Sometimes the scrapbook contained a photograph, sometimes it contained a headline, sometimes it contained articles that were kind of torn out, and they had to, each time they used those artifacts to piece together what this time period was about. And so they were really learning about the turn of the century with the industrialization in New York City. In this particular study, we used drama to kind of go back and see where some of these people came from, the countries they came from, what were some of the push and pull decisions that they had to make. And then when they arrived in the Lower East Side, what conditions they face. And this was all done through different drama lessons. Here in this picture, this lesson was about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. And they were all the workers in the factory. At one point, after we discussed some of the conditions and they experience it because an inspector comes in and starts asking questions, and through all of that, they are, responding to what the conditions are. Now, again, this is all something that they had also been studying in their classrooms over time. And then they receive this flyer and they have to decide whether they go to this meeting. And then at the meeting, they have to decide whether they're going to join the strike. Again, we do not tell them what the outcome was of that meeting and what the strike that actually happened. And they have a pretty healthy debate, understanding the risks it would be in the perspective that they're in. So here, they're really thinking now, learning about history through the drama, and the social action is whether, as a worker, what rights they can protest and demand. And then finally, in the third grade, We do a year-long curriculum, which is called, which is about the indigenous people of Manhattan and the subsequent Dutch colonists who came to the island. And then the third piece is really to kind of wrap up this framework is to really think about using what they learned to create a new future for New York City. So the framework is established when they get this riddle. Those who hold the map in their hands have the power to change the fate of this island, but to create the future, learn from the past. So they are an expert team of archaeologists who are given this mission to learn from the past to create the future. And that sets us on our year-long curriculum where they study about the Lenape people here on Manhattan. They are enrolled as Lenape and they're learning about what they had to do for survival, but also in terms of the complexity of their society, in terms of government and interrelationships, trade, you know, their relationship with the environment. And here the drama is a way for them to really problem solve and think through, well, if you need to build shelter and these are the materials you have, how would you do that? So it's combining thinking about how they would do it with some research. So it's, again, not that they are completely making this up on their own, but the first stab at trying to figure it out is before they do any research. They're thinking about how they can get food, what are some methods and food sources. And then we go into a study of the Dutch colonists who came to Manhattan. Again, here we are careful to have them really experience it as the people who settled here, who had a lot of problems to set up their colony, to survive, the relationships that they had with the indigenous people, with the enslaved people who were brought over. And they really had to think about, again, some of the issues that were faced, that the colonists faced. So I have a short video clip. This is before they actually came to the colony and they had to decide whether their family should travel to the colony or not. What they know about themselves is that they are living in Amsterdam. They are a family who came from another country as refugees, and their opportunities in Amsterdam are not the same as other Dutch people. And they're deciding now whether they should take the Dutch West India Company up on their offer to go settle in the New World.
This is a big risk for our family. We don't know what's over there, and I'm responsible for the family. So do you I mean, it would be good to have land and trees and really nice life, but it's a big risk. We don't know what's there.
Okay. So that, you can see they had slips of paper there. In that particular drama, they had different roles as family members, and this was a dinner conversation. So the different family members was, they were told, they were given what their stance was. So for example, one person did not want to go. One person was the one who heard the news in town square and brought it back to their family. Another person was somebody who, like the grandfather, who had information about where they came from and how they had to take risks to come to Amsterdam. So it was a little bit of information so that they actually had different points of view. And at this family dinner table, they had to discuss whether to go or not. And so there are 5 tables all having the same conversation. The next part in our study, again, we're very invested in bringing out the voices that are often not heard in history. So we do talk about the experiences of the enslaved people. We also then take the study into and talk about present day indigenous people, where the Lenape are today, so that they're not left with the misconception that Indigenous people only lived in the past. And to the point where they were really thinking about some of the issues that they face today and how that still connects to the issues in the past of land rights and having to try to protect their culture and their communities. And then the final piece, I'm not going to show you the video, but so then we raised the stakes. So by spring, this is by May, we had done our two big studies, the Lenape study and our study of New Amsterdam, using drama all along. We're still in this bigger framework of learning from the past, but now they are learning why they have to create the future. So they learn that from this news program that we filmed, this is a fellow teacher, that New York is no longer sustainable for the people and the plants and the animals that live there, that the mayor is asking for a full evacuation unless somebody can come up with a solution. And guess who thinks they have the answers? So of course the kids rally and say they can do it. And they spend about a month coming up with plans for a city of the future. But the important part is going back to that original mission or riddle, which is learning from the past to create the future. So it's not just we want candy everywhere kind of future. It's we spent a lot of time thinking about what were the big ideas, or what did they learn about from the past cultures that they would like to preserve for the future. So here, for example, you can see the housing group decided to make an underground city so that the land above is preserved and can remain pretty untouched. Other ideas are on this list. So, you know, these are third grade. We're not trying to have them come up with things that are realistic. They're third graders, and we kind of let them really innovate and imagine. And we talk a lot about how a lot of innovations come from ideas that seem impossible. We think about impossible dreams that we could have. Here's one that I would like to just read out loud. I'm just going to do a time check. Okay, great. So this group had their category was religions. So Together Angel Religions. Together Angel Religions is a religious system. It was made to bring people together and to stop hate for certain religions and cultures. It works by people complementing other people's religion. After that happens, those complements turn into synergy sparkles that connect to the force field. Once the synergy sparkles hit the force field, it makes it stronger. The force field is to make everywhere a safe place for every religion and everyone. It will help save the city because it helps people work together. That helps because it'll make people feel comfortable so they wouldn't want to move somewhere else. We need as many people as possible to help save the city. We learned from the Lenape that everyone respected everyone for who they are. So again, here you can see, you know, how kind of fantastic their imaginations are. I love these projects because it really is tapping into their very kind of childlike way of thinking about of solutions, right? Okay, and so really having them think about the future of New York, I don't think is that far-fetched of an idea. For me, it's probably one of the most important things that anybody can do, and to have third graders tackle it, I think it's not too early. It's really thinking about our social, our environmental, our political landscape, which they really had been learning about when they're studying the past. And I just have, just in conclusion, really two clips that really, in the children's words, express the complexity of what they learned, and also kind of the mindset that we want to send them out into the world with.
well, we were trained to be the past, meaning like we can actually experience what it would be like to be in the perspective of people who were living in Manhattan in the 1600s and the 1700s.
Why is that important?
That can help us face the future. The stuff we learned is real. The thinking was real. The drama was real in our imagination, but in the real technical world, it's not the drama isn't technically real. But saving the city actually technically could be real when we grow up, because if we actually learn what we can learn, and we might be able to. We will be the future of New York City. So if we learn all we can learn, we might be able to save New York City, or even the whole world with from anything.
From anything. So this really has transformed my teaching, and I think it's it goes way beyond reading about something, discussing it, thinking. Not to say those modalities are not important, but I think it adds a new dimension that really is, again, critical for children to really have them be able to play and imagine and have that connect to what they're learning. And so just in conclusion, here are some of the workshops that we do that are available. We do introductory workshops, which again is going to be the one that we're doing on November 13th. We do workshops also for advanced, practitioners. We're thinking about doing a 2-day workshop, perhaps this winter. And again, because I'm on leave this year, I'm available to come into schools and do workshops there, or to help work on folding Imaginative Inquiry into your curriculum and doing either curriculum development and or coaching. And it's entirely tailored to whatever you are working on in schools. And you'll definitely get information. You'll get the slides, and I'm happy to go on our mailing list and information. But at this point, I have a few minutes for questions.